Thank you. I'm very honored to be here, although I don't have anything to do with construction. I work in the gambling industry. I came here all the way from sunny island of Malta in the Mediterranean Sea. And yeah, I spent all my life in gambling, but I have a lot of touching points with everything what I heard so far, and I'll try to share my experience in a very interesting journey I had, and I think you might have something to learn on setting the right pace and the goals for Fintech in the perspective of chasing the success of Fintech we recently saw in Lithuania. So a little bit about me. I graduated applied mathematics in Kaunas University of Technology. I did quite a few interesting projects, starting with the bankruptcy of Ūkio Bankas and merger with Šiaulių Bankas, euro currency implementation in Lithuania at SEB, introducing business intelligence in the Mediterranean Bank in Malta, and working in gambling companies having between 100 to 3,000 employees. Until I arrived to the point where I am now, and I work in Roots, which is the unicorn startup in Malta. In the last 2 years, we made a number of awards. I didn't list all of them. The most important for us was, of course, Innovator and the Startup of the Year. To put some numbers on that, we know the growth of casino companies, and we know that the first year of our growth was by far the best in the world, and by far I mean 3 times faster than the second best casino if you compare the level of revenues they reached after 12 months after starting operations. So I'm gonna try and show you how we arrived at that point. So Roots is a very unique company. It's run by a professional basketball coach, and it was founded by similar way as the United States formed their national basketball team for the Olympics. Absolutely the best star of every field was contacted by a basketball coach and got an offer to quit our well-paid jobs, quit our careers, and pursue the goal of building much, much better gaming company and expect results only after 3 years. Some people said no, but we had enough people who said yes. We have another one Lithuanian who was in the starting team. She's our CFO. We got together and we made it happen. And we made it happen 3 times faster than we were planning to. So I would like to put all this presentation about as I said, trying to follow the path of the Fintech success. I was actually working in the banks in Lithuania when people started talking about something like Fintech for Fintech, working in Ūkio Bankas, which was filing for bankruptcy. I had no idea what these politicians are talking about. I did not believe in it. But as you can see, the timeline is very simple. The article is published in 2018, 4 years ago. Last year, if you go to some gambling or Fintech conferences in Malta, there are companies. This one particular is from Britain. It's a banking solution. And their main marketing angle is that they are not Lithuanian, because Lithuanian Fintech is so widely used now in Europe. Maybe it's hard to realize when you are in Lithuania. When we are outside of Lithuania, we know that the biggest chance to get financial solutions is in Lithuania, and there's no way. And it's not only Malta, not only gambling, but it's growing very fast. So what we see, or the results that we see in the Fintech, and if you remember the first slide from Žygimantas had this very nice exponential growth in the export of financial services from Lithuania. That exponential growth, which became visible in the last 1 or 2 years, is the tip of the iceberg. And during the last 4 or 5 years, a lot of people were working hard on under the water, under invincible part of it. And the visible part of the iceberg will keep growing as the certain level of managing the information about this whole concept nationwide became clear enough for everybody, and it was easy enough to join on board and start delivering the results based on the foundation which was built in the last 4 years. The absolutely critical part here is the technology. I call it as a cornerstone of your foundation, or the first stone that you put in your, or the first stone that people used to put in their construction thousands of years ago. And to emphasize on that, I want to ask you a question. Can you raise hand if you're using your smartphone for both your personal life and work, the same device? Almost everybody. raise hand if your device meets these criteria. You have two profiles, which one is for personal, another is for corporate. You have corporate software installed for information security, and you have at least 3 different widgets which manage your productivity in your personal life and in your work profile. So everybody who raised the hand before and didn't raise hand now, you're missing a lot. And well, I'm trying to picture of what you're missing and why you should come back after coming back from this conference today. Start doing things like Google how to increase your productivity and how to maximize what features you can get out of iPhone to make your day better and make you more efficient. So information management is a very complex topic. It can be very wide, it can be very broad, and there's a lot of speculation about it. The way I see it is a set of morals and commitments to do certain things that don't seem to be very important before you start doing it. It has to start with the management, with the leadership, and nothing happens with the leadership. And I've seen very interesting failures in trying to implement information management culture in the companies. For example, I was changing my job on average every 8 months for the first 9 years of my career, because I was very ambitious and I was trying to force this information culture from the bottom to the top. That will never work. I've seen companies having 500 employees, 1,000 employees, 2,000 employees, and 3,000 employees, trying to do the same thing, where shareholders drop the responsibility of driving certain values-based projects and changing the culture of the industry or the company and dropping the responsibility of middle management. That leads to a lot of money wasted and no results at all. So the leadership should start at the actual top level. The owners of the company, the regulatory bodies, the politicians, those should be the people who encourage everybody to follow and join on board. When everybody's on board, everybody has to collaborate and build the processes which are clear and standardized enough for everybody to understand, and they're flexible enough for small companies to follow the big companies. If you read about information management structure or the requirements for having it, usually the authors say the next phase is you combine leadership and processes into your operations. I added co-operations there because I think it's critically important, especially in the small markets like Malta or Lithuania, for people to share the knowledge. To show you an example of how I do that, every gambling company has a requirement by the Malta regulator that we need to have a software and system which addresses the gambling problems. We have to make sure that our players don't lose too much. Every company builds that product or some model which evaluates the player behavior and creates some triggers about potentially high losses. And every company sees this as a business secret, and nobody wants to tell how they do it. We took a completely different approach. We analyzed every available information about the topic released in the last 10 years. We engineered about 562 player behavior features, which reflect on the risk which might be involved, or the features that reflect the risk of player losing too much money and then maybe having problems with wife or so on. And we agreed in the top management we are going to make a 40-page completely detailed white paper and release it and send it to every regulatory body in the world, and also publish it for our competitors, because that's the way we see importance of sharing information and importance of, especially if we want to achieve something new and enter the new era of information. All of that has to be supported by data. I was quite happy to see the complexity of databases that you run behind your BIM tools, that's basically my life. I started my life in working as a database developer, and I spent most of my life cracking and hacking databases and achieving the impossible. And of course, all that has to be supported with technology. So if we are trying to think about new processes, and we don't have new technology, it means that we will just spend all of our time on the new processes and will not have time to actually get our work done. So all of that has to go parallel, adapting with the new technologies and mostly new software. When you consider the complexity and all the moving parts and the number of people involved in here, you arrive at the problem of the change management, because first of all, people simply don't want to change. Anything we want to change in our personal life or work or whatever starts with the denial. Human beings simply doesn't want a change. I got a good example for that yesterday. I called Bolt driver. He came. He has this Bolt application on the tablet, but he has it minimized. He asks me for the address and asks me for the directions. He made two wrong turns, and my trip took exactly twice longer than my Bolt app said. So the guy is working has all the tools in his car and is completely denying it and working the old way and trying to speak with the customer. And well, my intention is that I don't want to speak with the taxi driver, and there's a software which solves the problem of not having to speak with the driver and getting to the right place. Anyways, at certain points you realize that the change is inevitable, and you become really, really scared. When you realize the complexity of changes and how you have to get rid of your old habits, it seems impossible, and you enter the resistance phase. I have a really nice example here from my experience in a casino. Imagine there's a department which tries to identify your VIP customers, the people who have the most money. This department gets the system generates a report 30 days after you started playing in our casino, which provides some information about the player's wealth. The VIP manager team of 5 people take that report and analyze it and decide which of those 100 customers are actually VIPs and which are not VIPs. In parallel, I built the artificial intelligence which predicts the same thing, but just one day after the beginning of player lifetime. The VIP team is afraid to lose their jobs because their job will be done 29 days faster, so they reject the model and scraps the project. I keep the project running in parallel, nobody knows about it, and after 6 months, I show the results. The long-term lifetime value of the customers identified by my model after 1 day was 10% higher than the customers identified after 30 days. So that's really nice and visual example of how people are resisting to the change, which actually can help them to get their work done much faster, much better, and achieve much more results. When you pass the resistance and you realize that there's no way, but you have to let it go and pick it up. When I presented the results after secretly running the model for 6 months, people realized that, okay, there's no way out. I have to let go of my old habits, and I have to figure out how this works. When you start figuring out, you start understanding that you might get some personal gain out of this, and you will have more time. Maybe you will be able to leave your work 10 minutes sooner. Maybe you will be able to close 1 Jira ticket more every day. When you start realizing that, you start understanding and gaining the skills in everything what was needed to implement the change, all the new software, all the new processes, all the new people who are telling you what to do or what you have to tell them what to do. And at that point, you arrive to actual changing, and the change cannot actually we cannot call it a change unless you change in a way that you never stop changing. If you only think that you will change 1 bit and then you will not be changing anymore, that's not a change. That you are right back to the denial phase. One of the most important factors which are messing our life in the gambling industry is regulatory bodies and legislations. Somebody mentioned about the old-fashioned or the conservativeness of the construction industry. Luckily, gambling industry is not conservative and it's quite keen on adapting innovation, but imagine the situation. I don't really know how much you are restricted by the regulatory bodies, but I know that as a customer who wants to build a summer house in Lithuania, I spent more than a year trying to figure out what I have to do and what paperwork I have to get, and I still don't know. And imagine our case. We are a unicorn startup. We are making 100 million euros revenue a year in the first year, and one morning we wake up and read German Bundestag news, and they pushed some really chaotic legislation, and they just killed 70% of our revenue over one night. What do? We prepare in advance. We anticipate that this is going to happen, and we build new tools, and we enter new regulated markets, and we adopt new software and new processes, new information management techniques that will be needed to go back into Germany, which was prohibited for us for a short time. For example, one of the requirements by the German regulator was that every company needs to have information security management system certified by ISO 27001. What's that? It's a 4,000 pages long framework of how our company should manage information. We had to write it. 3 people wrote it in about 6 months. And for the next probably 6 years, we will try to actually implement it. Or at least make sure that every single person in the company is somewhat following it. Another interesting thing is the integrations, and I see it very similar way as somebody mentioned, the vertical integration between the modular constructions. When 4 years ago, we didn't have a single gaming company which had access to real-time financial data of their casino. They could only see the results of yesterday. 3 years later, we have to build real-time data integration with every single regulatory body of every country where we want to run our casino, which means our business intelligence or data team has 4 times more work, which did not even exist 3 years ago. When it comes to information that you create and you share about yourselves online, we have a regulatory instruction to screen every customer on 5 different verticals. Those are, of course, terrorism, finance, terrorism, money laundering, crimes, political exposed persons, and some media exposure. So imagine you're a casino customer in Malta. If you apply for the government election, next day we will find it out because Telefy will publish it, and some third-party agency will put that in the database, and that will automatically appear on your player profile in our casino. That will trigger enormous AML process, and you will probably stop playing in our casino. And finally, the business intelligence, all the tools and all these information systems which connect together to visualize your BIMs, which visualizes your project scope, which allows for people to collaborate with the tickets and Jira and so on. All that we call as business intelligence. And regulatory bodies start instructing us what business intelligence we should have. For example, we need to create reports where sometimes it takes, I think, my biggest report for the regulator was 5 terabytes of data. It took 1 week to transfer the file. And nobody heard about this kind of thing 2 years ago. But the governments are coming up with more and more restrictions, how to make us slower, how to make us less money. And we have to come up with the creative ways how to use technology to still facilitate our growth and speed. When we have all of that considered, prepared, and we went through the change curve, we actually start getting the business value. It's really hard, and this one is really like a paradox, because you start doing so much more documentation. Instead of having no bureaucracy, we now have 4,000 pages book about how we work. So that's a lot of bureaucracy. And how can this help us to work faster? Because every step of those 4,000 pages is supported by different technologies. Not only that is supported by technologies like Jira, which allow to manage your workload and projects, we build our own technology. We are unique a casino company because instead of buying tools, buying some software from software developers, we work with the same bunch of people who developed every possible aspect of the casino and shared all that knowledge between us. And now we try to share it with the regulatory bodies to come up with the better legislations. When you start collaborating with regulators, when you share information, you automatically gain quality. When you have speed and quality, you can control what happens in your universe. This is actual chart of, how should I call it, intensiveness of how I target or intensiveness of my retention efforts for the casino players. It's a trivial chart. It's in the range between 0 and 1. And every single move that happens here is affecting 1.5 million customers. And every that spike or drop is affected by me by tweaking about 5,000 components in my build system in about 10 minutes. Traditional casinos would have 30 people working on that for 6 months, and they would expect to see that drop that we saw last month, or at the end of the chart. They would just expect to see that in 6 or 12 months. So when we've gone through all that and we saw the results, for example, in this case, if this chart goes down, it means we are saving money. So when you show the results to the people, we have 120 people of very different profiles in the company. At that point, they really feel empowered. They understand that this bureaucracy is not boring at all, and it creates them a lot of new time, a lot of freedom to learn, experiment, bring up the ideas, and the teamwork just creates synergy, which creates exponential growth in your productivity. And most importantly, I hope everybody heard about 80-20 rule. So when we define work, we have 100% of work description, or understand 100% of the workload. Usually we do 80% of work in 20% of time, and we skip doing the last 20%. So in order to produce 100%, we have to aim for 124%, which doesn't make sense, but your idea has to be at least 124% of what you want to achieve, or 24% more than you think you can achieve. So if you want to achieve great, aim for the impossible, for more than 100%. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Edvinas. A good presentation to see what challenges and what opportunities do you have in this parallel universe, which seems very close to our universe. So I have, I can tell you that dealing with constructors is also gambling. They can cheat you in many ways. They do that actually. So from what you hear today, about this Contech or in general construction world, and I like your idea, what you mentioned about composing an NBA team. So what would be your insights? What is a dream team in Contech field company? What should be the composition probably of that team?
I think the biggest gap at the moment is IT and software, IT managers and software developers, or the software skills among the engineers, if I can put it that way. There are way too many old-fashioned people who, let's say, choose 2D drawings instead of 3D, starting with that. And doing this kind of thing that I just showed with internal resources would be, for sure, impossible in a construction company. You'll have to find really experienced consultants. You'll have to adapt semi-made or sort of a ready-made frameworks, choose the best ones, just kind of gamble that's going to work for you, and you'll have to get a lot of trust in the external providers and sources that you never thought about before.
So probably the future of Contech is like the reality of Fintech now. So exactly. It's not banking, it's more like IT. So probably the future of civil engineering is more IT
and
than
Roots
engineering.
Is actually, we consider, so traditionally a casino company in Malta calls themselves a marketing company. We call ourselves a technology or financial technology company. Our platform has the same complexity as any bank. The only difference is that we have about 5,000 times more transactions. We get tens of thousands of transactions every second that fires off hundreds of thousands of transactions for audit reasons and so on. The banks have exactly the same, but it's just much slower. And because we adapted this very pragmatic way of trying to achieve sort of fintech idea in gambling industry, I believe that was the biggest success for us. So if the construction people are aiming for this vertical integration between modular parts and allow the foreign consultants and especially software consultants to take big part of it and actually trust in these people, that would be the way. I would just really like to see the Sweden situation not repeating in Lithuania, where the consultants, and I actually did the same in casinos, that you go to the management is in the denial phase, and basically you have to make the people, decision makers, worried or afraid that there's no other way. And only then they start, well, that's basically letting go phase. I would like to see people actually skipping those first 3 steps and just picking up their hunger for becoming better.
And I have one more question. It's more like, for fun, but maybe it's not for fun. It's quite deep, actually. So are you planning to open a casino in a metaverse? And why I'm saying it could be deep, Metaverse is kind of a digital twin. It could be a digital twin, maybe. So
we don't have it yet on our roadmap. That's definitely something that will be happening. My colleague recently quit the job in our company, and he took another similar offer to build something new, which will be a metaverse casino, and they're already working on it.
You have a question? Yeah.
Sorry, it might be a really intriguing one. Looking at the banking and this casino business, it's quite easy. We have changed money, real money, to bits and bytes, yes? Any ideas from your side how we can trade concrete to bits and bytes? I think this is real challenge.
Sorry, I didn't understand.
The logic is that we have changed our real money. Let's say we have coins in our pocket, and now we have all digital. And I think this is a real game changer. I'm not saying that it's impossible in construction, but we are facing steel, bricks, and concrete, And I see this is like a huge challenge for us. What is our future material for construction, I'm wondering? Any ideas from your side?
I believe everything will be getting just smaller and smaller, so we are moving towards the liquids and powder direction. In fact, I have a friend in Switzerland who is an investor in the chemical materials, and one of his startups that he invested is developing 2 types of paint. One will be used instead of putting electricity wires, another one will be putting on top, which creates the fire safety and stands as a normal paint at the same time. So,
thank you, Edvinas. Thank you.